Hi there and welcome back. Now, it's commonly thought that the Mafia, like all criminal organisations, are exclusively dominated by men and that women don't play a relevant role within them. In part, this may be true, but one should not generalise because in the history of the Mafia, and especially today, women sometimes occupy an important place, if not the highest, within the hierarchy. There may be differences between one group and another, for example between Camorra and Cosa Nostra. But nowadays it cannot be ignored that women are able to efficiently manage entire clans and bring them to power. So in order to better understand this particular phenomenon, it's necessary to deepen our understanding of the female presence in the history of the Mafia, and the relationship between women and the various criminal organisations born in southern Italy. In Mafia tradition, the woman has always had a series of characteristics that take after the classic patriarchal culture very present in Italy, and especially in the areas of the south throughout the 1900s. Over the years, things have changed because by virtue of their inherent survival instinct, these organisations have always had to be versatile and able to adapt to an ever-changing society in order to survive. But originally the female figure was submissive, docile, dedicated to the occupation of motherhood and generally kept away from active crime and everything related to the clan. And this has always been the image of women linked to crime and the female world in general until the 1980s. This stereotype, which doesn't correspond to reality, has allowed the wives, the mothers, sisters and daughters of mafiosi to remain away from the spotlight for a long time, because at one time even the justice system considered women's relationships with crime unthinkable. The clans themselves helped to solidify this concept because the female world never had access to the whole series of rituals that characterise most organisations, such as the Camorra or Cosa Nostra. Despite this, history brings us a rich series of women who have been protagonists of important and terrible events and continue to be so even today. It can be said that some female characters have had a very ambiguous position within the Mafia hierarchies, and some have even managed to go beyond the simple role of devoted companion thanks to many factors that have prevented their husbands from pursuing their ambitions in person. In fact, there are examples of women who have taken the place of their fugitive companions or imprisoned ones at the top of important crime-related families and have managed to maintain order within the group with unexpected levels of strength and intelligence. These are the so-called substitutes. But we can also talk about the godmothers, or those women who have personally carried out illicit trafficking related to drugs and weapons. In the complicated and vast universe of the Mafia, women have carried out and continue to carry out simple and demanding tasks that are assigned with reference to the type of person and her link with the organisation. When we talk about the type of person, we mean that within the criminal structure there are very precise female figures who can perform active and passive functions depending on the case. In fact, family ties, the environment in which one grows up and one's own personality can heavily influence the career that a woman can pursue in the world of crime. Thanks to the study of the Mafia society and the collection of testimonies of Mafia women who became police informants, criminologists and law enforcers have been able to distinguish two types of Mafia women. The first is represented by women who are born and grow up in a Mafia environment, therefore daughters of bosses and criminals, wives, sisters-in-laws and sisters. They usually have a knowledge of what the men of the family do, and when the men are arrested or are on the run and don't have the opportunity to direct their trafficking, the women take over many or all of the clan's activities. They are therefore valid and reliable substitutes and messengers between the bosses and their subordinates at large. They also play a role of moral and psychological support. The second type includes all those women forced to live on the margins of society. Alone and without means of survival, they find in the Mafia organisation the only support and source of income. They then become pawns within the illegal market, especially that of drugs, often performing the task of invisible couriers because they are less noticed by the police. In addition to this, we mustn't forget that female world performs a precise educational task within the Mafia universe. In fact, it's the mother who transmits the cultural and moral code to her children, teaching them the correctness of the mafia modus operandi, in sharp contrast to the civil and moral values of society. To be mentioned in particular is the incitement to revenge, a psychological pressure made by mothers and sometimes sisters to their sons or brothers to do private justice against those who killed or humiliated the head of a family. Along with these active tasks, there are passive ones, but equally important. The woman bound to a mafioso must keep up the honour of her man and of the family by behaving impeccably, preserving respectability through modesty and rectitude, as well as maintaining her virginity until the wedding. Finally, the Mafia Marriage is an important moment in which the female figure is the protagonist. She becomes a meeting point between two families and a way to seek and weld relationships and acquire more power. In recent years, justice has succeeded in recognising the deepening role of women in the mafia fabric, and it's emerged that female power is much greater than previously thought. When the clan finds itself in a serious difficulty, it calls upon women who, although not formally affiliated, are one of the pillars that keep the criminal network on its feet. From the 1970s onwards, the need to involve more trustworthy people in illicit trafficking developed because power had increased, the areas of control had widened, and activities had multiplied. In short, there was a need for a proper workforce, and who better than female figures linked to the mafia families could fill this gap? In addition, women live parallel lives to crime, and many of them managed honest activities that could be useful on many occasions, like, for example, laundering money. Today, women are present in three important areas of crime: drug trafficking, power management, and the economic financial sector. Now, the latter is particularly interesting because through women finding their powerful niche in this sector, they're presenting to the world what is seen as the clean face of the mafia. According to data collected through the Dawn raids on mafia businesses, it's emerged that 52% of shareholders are women. And this means that in order to protect their properties and their businesses, the bosses and the mafia families make their wives and sisters the legal owners of assets. Partly because they also tend to manage commercial premises, hotels, restaurants, and much more in a much more efficient and fruitful way. So it can be said that today women are a fundamental part of the mafia structure, able to escape the eyes of the law thanks to their unofficial affiliation with the mafia, and have become a valuable intermediary between bosses and clans, often moving deeper in the shadows and thus very difficult to pin down. So there you have it, another interesting insight into the mafia. Please, of course, do subscribe as always, and we'll see you next time. Ciao.